So in the past I had created a video which showed how to create this draggable element, and you could also set like should it go outside this way or it can be dragged anywhere on the page or not. But at that point I said that we cannot add this effect, which is, if you look at this one, you could see how it glides. You could see even when we rotate, you can see it keeps rotating but it slowly stops. So in the past we could only do this first effect, which is like moving anywhere that we want, but it would not glide anywhere. But with the new GSAP, which is now completely free, because this was a pro feature at the past, it was only available if you buy the membership in the past, but now GSAP is completely free, so all the effects are free. So we are going to use this Inertia plugin, and I'll explain some of the stuff that it can do. For example, I can drag and drop like this and it will go back to its original location. You could see. You could also make it glide just this way too, which is pretty easy to do. And then you could also create a rotation effect like this. And I did some more coding, basic coding, to kind of make it go to the default state. You can do whatever you want. Maybe if you don't want it to go to the default state, you could do that. But if you want to have something like this, then you could also do that. Another thing is I kind of wanted it to, keep moving in the same direction like this, and then in the same speed get slower and slower and slower and then get to 0, which is like this original rotation. But again, wasn't able to do it. It's not available in direct GSAP. So right now it just does this. Okay, so you rotate and then it slowly goes to the original location. So I just duplicated this section so that I can show from scratch. Basically one container instead of this second container, and then an image in here. At the end of this we will add our HTML widget, and instead of this HTML widget we will add extra code. This code is available in description. You could check the blog page, it would have the code, but I still want to show from the scratch so that you can easily control the values and how you can make it be like your desired effect. So again, if you search for GSAP CDN and go to the CDN.js, I would simply just copy the GSAP, which is like a default GSAP. In the HTML widget, add this. We will also go down and search for draggable, copy this. This is all part of GSAP. Okay, so each plugin is part of GSAP, so you need to make sure this is enabled. Now with this draggable, we can do effect, but it cannot glide and all. You could do like basic effect, but if you want it to glide a bit or go back to its original location, you need to search for Inertia plugin, copy this and add it. So now this scripts would basically run on this particular page. Let's go to style. Just type style like this. Go to your logo or whatever you set. You could add anything. Okay. Just add a CSS class to it. For this video, I'm calling it DM drag element TUT. If you use the code that is copied in the description, it would be written in the blog post what CSS class I have used. Let's do dot DM drag tutorial and then make the transition be none important like this. And then in the script, we will type some basic stuff. Again, everything is available in description. And let me just copy this stuff. Okay, this much part. So again, this one basically initializes the plugins. Sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. So that's just a good way to just add it once, so that anything that is added in here, it will basically just set it up. You only need to add it once in the whole page. Then for the dot, this part, we need to set our CSS class. So which one should be draggable? And then in the type, it says X. So now this one would only move in X direction. We want both directions. So if you go in draggable, if you scroll down, if you search for type, you could see that there's options like XY. This is basically the default one. And this one basically makes it move on X direction, Y direction, or any direction. So even if you don't type this part, which is this one, it will still use XY. But if you type something like X, then we will only be able to move it left and right. If you type Y, it would only move up and down. For example, in this in this example, you could see that I can only move it left and right, not up and down. And then there are more stuff like left top. So for example, if you are using position absolute or fixed, you could do that. Rotation, which we will use soon. and then there's like XY, top, left, and all that stuff. Okay, and here it says default is XY. So if you want, you could just type XY in here. It's not needed, but we can add it. And then there is bounds. So this is also optional. So if you don't want to contain it, basically if you don't add this bounds, you will be able to move it anywhere that you want. For example, in the example, I cannot go outside this container, but if you don't add bounds, you could move it anywhere that you want on this page. So this bounds needs to be set. So for example, if I go into this container and then call it DM drag container TUT, or maybe you could even set it to this one or wherever you want the bounds to be. And I'll basically type it like this, DM drag TUT. Let's do publish and see how it looks. So here it is, and you can see I can drag it, but it does not glide at all. And it is basically getting sticky like this. Okay, so we got like basic drag option around here, and I'll also give you some more ideas about what else are available in here, like on release, on press, like this. These are like very cool effects, but I cannot show in detail because this is like dependent on what you're trying to do, but I'll explain some of the stuff on what it does. So to add inertia, we simply need to do comma inertia, if I can type it correctly, inertia true, like this. Let's do publish. If I scroll down around here, you could see I can drag and then just leave. You could see as soon as I leave my mouse, it drags in the same speed, something like this. But you could see it does not go outside this container. So there is one more cool stuff that we can do is, let me show in the previous one that I made. Let me just copy this. It's called edge resistance. So if I search for edge resistance, there is also drag resistance. Basically when you drag, it would kind of put pressure. So right now you could see that it is following my mouse completely, but you could add some drag resistance and it will basically kind of be delayed. I'll show you quickly. So let's just first do edge resistance. So I just typed edge R capital resistance 1. So let me show what this does. 1 would basically do nothing, also no comma at the end. So again, 1 would do nothing. So let me just do 0.5 something. And let me show. Okay, you could see I'm able to drag it outside, but it does not go completely as my mouse. So you could see now my mouse always follows, or the logo always follows my mouse. But if I go out, you could see it is taking a bit pressure. It's not completely there like elastic. It's a bit elasticy like this. So it tries to get into this bounce. Same with drag resistance. So if I do something like drag resistance, so I turn the edge to drag to publish. You could add both if you want. You could see that I'm able to drag it, but it does not follow my mouse. So it's kind of like a bit resistance around here like this. So you could see it does not follow my mouse and there's a bit of a resistance. So that is what drag and edge resistance does. Pretty cool effect. And the next part is, you could see that it needs to go back, right? Before we do that, let me just show that if you turn this XY to rotation, something like this, you could see that it basically turns to rotation. Again, I have drag resistance, so maybe that's making it a bit slower than my mouse, but you could see I can just drag it in any direction that I want. It does not go to the default state like the one that I made in here. But again, pretty easy to turn this into a rotation. So I'm going to turn this back to XY and maybe remove the drag resistance too. Don't really need it. To comma, to snap. And the snap code is basically, if you search in this documentation, you could find how the snap is basically. So this is basically what you add, like snap X and Y 0. This would basically make it go to 0. Okay. Now, one important thing regarding this is, let's say if I add it like this, it is controlling translate. Okay, so this will basically, if you do something, let's say transform and do some translate in here, it will kind of mess it up. Okay, so just keep in mind that if you want to use a translate in for this particular element, then instead of adding the translate to this image, because this one is the stuff that is created draggable, add this in a container of itself and add the translate to that one. Okay, because right now if you use X and Y, it will basically make it to the original location, because when we move, we are actually controlling the X and Y. Let me see if I can show you guys. So if I do inspect, maybe this would explain to you a bit. If I select this image, you could look at this transform, which is X and Y, right? And you could see that it moves, it changes based on where I'm trying to move. So what we are basically doing is that when we leave, it goes back to X and Y, which is 0. So if you do some changes to the X and Y by default, then it will not go to the right location, but you could also add your own values like 500 pixel, 200 pixels in here, and it will still work. Do like 200, 300, something like that. And you could see it goes back to the original location. Okay. You will also see that if I do quick dragging, then it kind of goes outside, but that is just because the browser is not able to calculate it like way too quicker. Okay, so there is some issue, but again, I don't think it's that big of a deal. For rotation, you need to type something like this, which is function value return 0. Basically, this value or the snap will basically give 0 value. Okay, whenever this is called, it will give 0. And if I add this instead of snap around here, which is snap function return 0, and then turn this into a rotation like this, let's publish. If I rotate this, you could see it's not rotating completely. It's kind of creating a resistance, because the way it works is another thing, I'm not able to rotate on the left side. That is because we are using bounds. With rotation, you kind of need to remove bounds. But in the bounds section, you could actually add some, let me show here. You could set something like bounds and then set like top, left and all that stuff. But you could also set like minimum rotation, maximum rotation. So it does not rotate like 360 and all. Okay, so right now I removed the bound so that I can move it in both direction. You could see, oh, not this one, sorry, this one. You could see, but you could see that if I hold, I can move it any way I want, but it will basically go back to the 0, because we are basically saying that go to 0 degree. But if I move it once, it's 360. If I move it again, it's 720. So if I keep moving, it will just keep increasing and it will try to go to 0. So the way it works is that when you leave, it goes back to 0. So that's how snap works, right? But in this effect, you could see that I'm able to move it nicely and then it goes slowly. Even though I'm leaving my mouse, it kind of works same, but it goes to 0 later. So to do that, I'll basically just give you guys the code directly for this one. So basically it constantly calculates how many rotation it has been done and finds the closest rotation. Or closest like straight degree, like 0, 360, 720, which is like the closest, so that it does not spins that many times. And what this does is that when this is stopped, like on throw complete, so basically when it stops spinning, it basically starts to go to the closest location in 1 second. So if you want it to be slower, you could increase this value. So 2 seconds, 3 seconds, faster would be smaller. And then you could remove this easing. If you don't want, you could type none in here so that it goes linearly. Power 1, 2, 3, 4 out would basically be like quicker at start and slower at the end, based on how much power you want. So if you use this code, which would be in description, then make sure to give your element the CSS class DM drag element 2. Okay. And few more stuff that I want to show you guys is there are a lot more cool stuff that you could do. So if you search for drag end, you could see there's on drag end or on drag start. Basically, let's say if you were having some cool stuff like multiple fruits icon, and maybe if I select the red color fruit and start dragging, the background color changes to red. If you choose like banana, then it will basically turns the background to be yellow. So based on this drag start, drag end, you can kind of create some effect. I cannot go in detail about this stuff because it will require like its own video. It's very simple to do too. It's just like this function. If you know JavaScript, you would be able to do it. So if you scroll down, you can actually find some demos that are available, and also few more stuff about like live snap that you could kind of do stuff like this, where you could see right now I can move it basically like this. But if I enable live snap, it will basically snap to these directions like this automatically. And then snap end position to grid would be basically if you drag it, it will basically go to a particular You can see particular or closest spawn, what you call like closest grid and all. So there are like a lot more cool stuff that are available. It is also available with Snap too. For example, in the Snap, instead of typing this x0, you could actually set like 0, 30, 60, 90. So instead of it always going to 0, you can also set like the closest location. So it will basically check which is the closest. So is it 30 pixels closest to me, is 60 pixels closest to me, is 80 pixels closest to me, and it will go to that location. You could even go to ChatGPT and basically just ask it to do it for you. That would be like the fastest way to do it, but again, knowing how it works and what it does is helpful. So yeah, all the code would be in description. So that's all. Thanks for watching.